What is up, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome into the Top Lax Recruits Podcast, your weekly lacrosse recruiting podcast. I'm your host, Tucker LaBelle, welcoming you into episode 2 and week 2 of the podcast. Today, we have an absolutely phenomenal guest on for you with a lot of knowledge and insight in a very unique lacrosse situation. We sat down today with Coach Chad Surman of the Iona Gales. Iona is a first-year Division I men's lacrosse program, and we had a whole lot of questions to ask him from what was the recruiting like, what was the operations like, and how excited are the people to have a Division I men's lacrosse team on their campus. Well, a little bit of background for you about Iona University before we jump in. Iona University was founded in the 1940s in New Rochelle, New York, just outside of New York City, in an area that many would consider a lacrosse school waiting to happen. Well, that's exactly why they added men's lacrosse and hired Coach Chad Surman with an absolutely phenomenal resume, both playing and coaching wise. The perfect candidate to lead this program in year one and really start the program up. In October of 2022, the Iona University Athletic Department made the decision to hire Coach Chad Surman, and that's where history really began. You're probably listening to this right now and you've heard about Iona for the first time, or maybe you've been following them in the news the entire time. But we sat down with him just ahead of their season opener and inaugural game against Hofstra on the Iona campus, which for anyone who watched was a really electric atmosphere. The support was phenomenal. And maybe we just fell in love with Iona University a little bit more after watching that ESPN broadcast. We're here to tell you the story behind of what went into that, the years in the past that really fed into where they are right now, and learning a whole lot more about this freshman roster that is competing at the Division I level. Without further ado, let's jump in right now with head coach Chad Surman of the Iona Gales. What is up, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Top Lax Recruits Podcast. We are joined today by Coach Surman of Iona as they prepare to go into their first season in NCAA Division I, facing off actually this weekend against Hofstra in Game 1. Coach, we're excited to have you on today. We got a lot of great questions for you, and you're in a unique opportunity to start the Division I trend at a university, and so we have a lot of questions off of that. Coach, I'll jump right into it. The first question, being hired in October of 2022, day one on the job, what did that look like? What did you need to kind of start working on right away? And, jumping in head first, what were the first steps?
Tucker, thanks first and foremost for having us on. Opportunity to showcase our program and talk a little bit about Iona University. So day one on the job, I think the to-do list literally said everything. When you're starting a new program, it's everything from infrastructure stuff to getting the right personnel to recruiting across the board. And so how we tried to go about the process was really that entire first year was a year of planning. And so in fall 22, spring 23, we took that entire year to focus on getting our systems and people in place. And so system side of things would be everything from field and stadium logistics to our locker room setup to the strength training programs that we'll have for our guys, community service efforts we want to be a part of, what kind of academic support will our guys need and have in place. And so that was really kind of the system side. The people side was the personnel in those positions, right? So bringing on other assistant coaches to work with our guys, bringing on our support staff and trying to figure out which athletic trainer will be working with our team, which strength coach, and really just getting aligned on the program's goals and kind of what it takes to have a Division I men's lacrosse team. And then last but not least with the personnel is our players. And so in year one, hitting the ground with recruiting, building the best 2023 high school graduating class that we could, 2024, eventually 2025s, and now, of course, obviously on to the 2026s. But that was really much of that first year was just a big year of planning and trying to get as many things together as we could so that the following year in fall 23, spring 24, last year, when we welcomed in the high school graduating class of 2023, those guys were hitting the ground running and really could test all those systems. That group was with us for the entire year last year, and they were basically doing everything that a Division I men's lacrosse team would do, with the exception of play games. So we had them in the field every day, had them in the weight room all the time. We held them to academic standards. We had them in the community, being a part of community service projects. So really just the most real Division I experience that we could provide with the exception of playing lacrosse games. And then that year is the base of what we're building upon now. And so now we have our second recruiting classes on campus, the high school graduates of 2024. Those guys are providing the additional depth and talent that we need to compete this spring. And those guys have done a great job, entering the university, jumping on board, and trying to gel and build this thing as quickly as we can. And I give a lot of credit to our sophomores who returned. Those guys have done a great job in leadership and showing the ropes to the new guys coming in, so that we have a little bit of upperclassmen feel and support for that freshman group that's on campus right now.
Absolutely, and it's amazing for all of us in the media and the fans on the outside, getting to see this being built, because rarely do we see the opportunity in today's age to see programs start completely, and so it's an amazing thing that I think a lot of people don't know the full process behind it. And I think it'd be easy for anyone to look at it and say, oh well, they must have started a year or so ago, but then finding out that this really took shape a number of years ago, and there were a lot of moving parts to making that happen is truly remarkable. Now, Coach, we always like to ask a little bit of, how do people become coaches? What's their motivation? What's their background? And obviously, Division I coaches, there's a journey that leads to that point. For you as a player, making, multiple stops as a player with Salisbury, Onondaga, and I believe Lemoyne, as you just filled me in here. You had a great playing career, and you won a national championship with Onondaga. But what takes you from, the player you were to the coach? Was there a major motivator in wanting to become a coach, or a moment and a turning point in your life that, coaching was going to be your thing?
Yeah, so I was fortunate to be a part of some really great programs as a player. And for a long time when I was in school, I actually thought I was going to be a teacher. That was the path that I was headed down. A lot of the people that were really influential in my life were teachers and or coaches. Didn't really know any full-time coaches. Most of our coaches either worked other jobs or were teachers at the school. And so for me, I always kind of found that to be a really intriguing profession. And I knew what that looked like because I had that path laid out in front from some mentors that I worked with. And so it wasn't really until Coach Berkman put it in my ear when I was at Salisbury about potentially being a college lacrosse coach. And so he offered me an opportunity when I was at Salisbury to stay on as a graduate assistant, where I could continue education and continue down that path if I wanted to be an educator. Or if I fell in love with coaching, I could try and stay in it full time as a college lacrosse coach. And I knew right away after my first practice. I remember driving back. It was fall ball at the time, and I was heading home, and I had a big smile on my face, and I was like, "All right, as long as they'll let me do this, I'm in." And so I stayed on for 2 years during my time at Salisbury as a graduate assistant. From that experience, I was able to go back home and work with Coach Cassis at Lehigh University. So home for me is the Lehigh Valley. My parents' house, it's still 8 miles from Lehigh's campus today. And that was an awesome experience. One, to be able to get into Division I lacrosse and kind of get exposure to, that level, and to see, all the teams that you're used to playing or used to seeing growing up on TV, you now get to play against, which is really cool. But that was also a great experience because Coach Cassis had done such an awesome job in a short period of time of transforming that program. I think in 2013, 2014, they had won, maybe it was 12 and 13, they had won back-to-back Patriot League championships and then played for it the year before. And so I was coming in that year right after all of that and seeing the success and seeing, how he was able to quickly transform a program into being nationally competitive was really cool insight for me as a young coach. And very helpful because my time at Salisbury, you almost get a little bit accustomed to the success level. And it seems like year in and year out, they're always competing for a national championship. And as great of an experience as that was, it is hard to kind of piece that out of like, okay, well, how do you transform a program who isn't just building off of last year's success and hasn't had 25, 30 years, I think it was at the time, of success to build off of. And so very great experience working with Coach Cassis. From there, I was able to go south down to Mercer University. That was a really fun experience. I hadn't spent much time in the South or Georgia, but thought, why not? As a young coach, it could be a cool experience. And they had just finished up, I think it was year 4 as a program. So being a part of a new program, not as new as Iona, but definitely being a part of a newer program was appealing, and it seemed like a fun endeavor. And so great experience working down there. I think my first few years I was there as the assistant coach. And then my last few years I was there as the head coach. And so my former boss, a guy by the name of Kyle Hannon, who was the head coach down there, he had been a head coach for 34 years or so, I think it was. And so when he decided to step down and kind of get away from college lacrosse for a short period of time, because of the relationships I had with the players, the parents, the alumni, the administration on campus, they felt comfortable promoting me to the head coaching role. So really cool opportunity down there. I think we were down there for almost 8 years, so became home for a while. But as I found, life doesn't stop because you're coaching lacrosse. So in that time, my wife and I had our first child. We had our second on the way, and really started to kind of take a look at what we wanted our life to look like, what that looks like for us. And we agreed if either one of us got a really cool opportunity to get a little bit closer to home, closer to family, we'd take a strong look. And my wife got a great job offer. It was too much to say no to, and it was really cool for her and our family, but challenging for me, because obviously you can't coach remotely. So for us, we made the decision to move to New York City. And about a week after that, I was fortunate to land on my feet. Started working with the Manhattan college guys. A good colleague of mine, John O'Derna, had just taken over as head coach and offered me an opportunity to join him and his staff. And so it was a perfect fit. We were having a great time and enjoying working there at Manhattan College. And then about 4.5 months into that position, Iona, which is just up the road here in New Rochelle, announces that they're starting Division I men's lacrosse. And to be candid, I didn't know a whole lot about Iona. I knew hoops was pretty good. That's what most people, I think, know Iona for. But aside from that, I didn't know much about the campus or the profile of the school or anything of that nature. But as I did my research and I learned more about the academics that are offered, the alumni and what they've been able to do, the school profile in terms of how many students go here, what the class sizes are like, learned about the rest of the athletics department, right? How successful are the other teams? Obviously, people know basketball, but how competitive and how supported are the other teams? And after doing all that research, I came away really impressed. And the phrase I've shared with my athletics director on my interview and what I still feel today is that Iona to me is a lacrosse school that just hadn't had it yet. But I think we look and feel like a lot of schools that have historically been really successful in the sport of men's lacrosse. And I think we have the resources and the sport and the commitment here to build a program of national distinction. And it's been an exciting journey. It's been a long road so far, but I know we're just at the beginning still, and there's a lot more in front of us.
And you alluded to my next question perfectly there, Coach. And I think your phrasing of a lacrosse school kind of waiting to happen is spot on to anyone that does any research on Iona. It makes so much sense. But a student body of roughly 3,000 people and a nice little campus in the city there, and not too far from the city, I should say. What's the energy like? Going into year one and game one. How supportive are the students, the kind of backing and even the community? What's the excitement like right now?
Very excited. Across the board, there's whether it be our president and our president's council that has been unbelievably supported with trying to get marketing, promotional opportunities, getting in touch with community organizations, really trying to get word out. Other teams have been really successful that have been really successful here have been reaching out and supporting. I know men's basketball has been really supportive of us, and I ran into our water polo coach the other day who was like, "When's the first game? We're gonna have our people there." And I think that's been really cool to see because it can be tough being new sometimes on a college campus, and I have to give credit back to our guys because I think our players have done a tremendous job of getting themselves tied into the greater Iona community. And so people now want to give back and they want to support us now that it's our time and we're getting things going on our end. But our guys have done a great job of jumping in head first, so much so that they have these striped jumpsuits that they'll wear to basketball games. And, our men's soccer team won the MAC championship this fall, and they were, the overtime game-winning goal that won the MAC championship. The first person that guy ran to was like 6 of our guys in maroon and gold jumpsuits and on the side of the field. And so it's really cool to just kind of see our guys connect and to see that reciprocated back to us. And so there's been a lot of excitement. There's been a lot of intrigue. Our field really helps with that. So our stadium's kind of right in the heart of campus. On one end line is our business school. On the other end line is our cafeteria and student center. And then the athletics department kind of runs all along the sideline. And so we've been kind of front and center for some time. Even as students are walking to class, we'll be out there at practice at 11:30, classes are changing soon, and there's students walking by. And even on a day-to-day basis, people get exposure to the game of lacrosse, and we get some free energy back, just seeing people coming by or stopping by the fence and watching a few minutes of practice. So it's been really fun, and really fortunate that Iona made the decision to start men's lacrosse because it's just been a great fit so far.
That's amazing. That's again, that's the excitement and the information people need to hear about is that, you're exposing people to the game and you're right there in the forefront, which is so amazing. 11 states represented on roster number one, I guess we could say here, plus Canada. I'll ask kind of a two-part question here. What do you look for in players, and then maybe advice to players looking to get recruited to the next level that is attractive to coaches or even your program?
Yeah, I think for us looking for players, I think first and foremost we want good people, right? We can certainly help guys get a little bit better stick skills. We can help them get to the right spots and improve their understanding of the game. But I think it's tough if you're not starting from a place of that's a good kid. So I think first and foremost we look for guys who, have a certain level of compete, who I think do things the right way. We go to recruiting events and such, we're seeing how they're interacting with their teammates and their coaches, seeing how they conduct themselves on the sideline. Are they a guy who stays after and picks up a few water bottles? Those things I think definitely jump out. Certainly on the field, I don't think we're any different from many other Division I coaches, right? We're looking for guys who are big and fast and strong, but we also have some guys who aren't maybe super big, or aren't super strong yet. But I think for us, we're trying to find the right combination of guys that can play, whether it be within our offense or our defense, and make an impact. And so, something that we talk about a decent amount is, just things that guys can do well. And so if a guy isn't maybe 6'4", well, he's probably pretty fast if we're looking at him. And same thing defensively, obviously everyone wants the 6'2", 6'3", really rangy, long defenseman. But if there's a guy who's 5'11", has really great feet and is strong, he's a guy who can make an impact. And so, for us, I think, as much as we have hardened things that we look for, on the lacrosse side of things, we obviously also look at what our team needs and, how a guy could fit in and make an impact. And so there isn't really one blanket thing that fits all guys, but I think the most commonality that you could find across our board is we just have guys that are pretty good humans. I think that's the one common trait that they probably all share.
Absolutely. And bringing good humans, often brings good leaders and good personalities. And that's one thing, I think we always wonder with first year programs is how do you find, leadership in your players in a group of, freshmen and redshirt freshmen and guys kind of going into the first battle together? Do you look for leadership differently? What has that been like?
Leadership in a new program is really hard. That was very evident when we decided to start this the way that we did. And so a lot of people ask, right, have we gone to the transfer portal? Are we planning to bring in a bunch of transfers? And the best thing I feel like we could have done as a program is to try and get guys that are homegrown guys that we can vet through the recruiting process. We can bring in that class together. We can help develop and mentor those guys. Knowing that we had a year with that first class allowed us to really do that is, to kind of lean into leadership, lean into program expectations, and those kind of things that when you're playing games, you don't have as much time to spend on those. And so for us, really that whole first year with that class on campus was a lot more about how we handle ourselves, in the classroom, off the field. What's our energy in the weight room? How do we want to, practice, and what is that energy level? What are some of the non-negotiables for us? For us, we talk a lot about brown M&Ms. And so we have certain things that we call brown M&Ms, things that our guys will do. And I'll tell you what a couple of those are in a moment. But so brown M&Ms goes back to the band Van Halen. So if you're a music guy and you've heard any of the Van Halen songs, when Van Halen was on tour, they had a music writer that basically had in their contract they wanted a bowl of M&Ms in their green room, but they didn't want any brown M&Ms in the M&M bowl. And a lot of people just kind of wrote that off as like these are eccentric artists, and artists sometimes have these weird demands, and nobody really knew the method behind the madness. But it came out many years later that that was a quick visual check for the band to know whether or not they were showing up to a venue that like did their due diligence and was able to meet their demands. Van Halen at the time they had a really complex light sound show, and so they knew that if they showed up and they looked in their green room and they saw brown M&Ms, well, if this venue couldn't do this one simple, albeit tedious task, that they should probably double and triple check the lighting and the sound system because something wasn't going to go right. And so for us, we have those similar things, right? Whether it be how the locker room is set up and how we ask guys to organize that, or whether it be when we meet, in between drills and we huddle up, we ask our guys to put their sticks on their shoulders, just so that they're focused. It emphasizes playing with your stick up. It also keeps, Johnny in the back of the line from restringing a sidewall for the ninth time. And, we know as coaches, okay, we've got all eyes, we've got all attention, and guys are ready to go so that when we give information, they're ready for that next drill or ready for that next play after the timeout. And so there's a certain few things in our program that we have that we would put in that brown M&M category, but that has helped us with the leadership end. And then, yeah, over time, guys start to emerge. We've probably spent a lot of time talking about it before we got to that point where we felt comfortable naming somebody as a captain. But for us, our first captain in program history is a guy, Jimmy Kennedy. Jimmy is a sophomore for us. And it was this fall that probably about halfway through the fall that we, did a team vote, and he ended up receiving, lion's share of the votes. I think almost everyone voted for him. And so for us, he was probably a leader before we even named him a captain. But he was the guy that everyone felt the most comfortable moving forward with. And then this spring, we actually added in a second captain in Gary Chabelle, who's a freshman for us. And so we've got one sophomore and one freshman that are kind of leading the way right now. And when we feel like it's needed, then we add more guys. But for right now, those guys are doing a great job of kind of manning the ship and keeping us moving in the right direction.
Absolutely. And as you say, right direction, some matchups ahead here. I think the one right now that everyone's circling is game one against Hofstra. Saturday, you guys are going to be playing on ESPN Plus, I believe, a noon Eastern start there. I know TopLax will have somebody out there covering the game to bring some media as well there too on the TopLax Recruits pages. What are you looking forward to about game one in this matchup against Hofstra? And is there excitement, specifically from the guys for this matchup?
Guys are very excited. They've been excited for a long time. I think our sophomores haven't been with us for an entire year without games. That's a long time since those guys have had a game day, going back to their senior springs in high school. So for those guys, they're definitely chomping at the bit to get out there and to put on the uniform and to just have an official game day. And so our guys are amped up, maybe even a little much right now. We have to kind of get them calm and just understand it's still lacrosse and it's something that we do every day. And if we do those things that we do every day, we're going to be in a good position throughout the course of the game. But definitely a lot of excitement, and that's something that everyone's been looking forward to for a long time. And it's really cool to see because across campus and everyone else, it seems like there's been a lot of, eyes on our program and a lot of people wanting to, support us in this first one and beyond. And so looking forward to Saturday, looking forward to seeing our guys just compete. Above all else, I hope they fly around and play as hard as they can and play for each other, play for the program, and really just have a great day of lacrosse.
Absolutely. And we want to give you the platform for the last couple of minutes here. Why should players consider Iona, and what makes Iona special in your opinion?
Iona's different, being a new program, just because every other program right now is well established. They have their traditions, and they don't really stray too far from that mean. Year in and year out, maybe they win a couple more games, a couple less games, but they've kind of been set in their ways a little bit. We are so new and so undetermined, and I think for the right competitive individual, that's an exciting thing. Guys know coming to Iona, they're going to get a great education. They're going to be well positioned beyond their time as a student athlete. When they go to graduate, they're going to be in a really good position to get jobs and move forward. But when it comes to the lacrosse piece, I think one thing that is really different here is guys get to be a part of firsts, right? And so whether that be our first win, whether it be our first win against a ranked opponent, our first winning season, our first MAC championship, right? Like those are all really special moments that are going to be forever tied to our program. And so the first waves of guys that can help us achieve those things, like that's in the cement, that's forever. And that's a legacy that those guys get to leave behind. So 10, 15, 20 years from now, when they're looking back on their time here at Iona, they're just forever tied to us in a really special, really unique way. And I think that for the right competitive individual is a little bit different. And it's what helped us to, I think, get the most high profile recruits in our program here. They've got some guys that had really good options coming out of high school, but ended up choosing us because they wanted to be a part of that journey and they wanted to do something a little bit different. And I think that's what makes Iona special and why I think a lot of our guys have ended up where they are.
Coach, we appreciate your time, and I can speak for all of us in the lacrosse community. We're wishing you the best of luck moving into this season, and we are really excited to tune into the first game this Saturday against Hofstra. Wishing you and the guys the best of luck in the season ahead.
Thank you, Tucker. I appreciate you having us on and wish you guys luck with this podcast getting rolling. Excited for what you guys do for the sport and the coverage that you provide. So appreciate you guys.